It is estimated that around 134 million people needed humanitarian assistance worldwide last year, but only about 97 million were able to get it. So concludes the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies World Disasters Report 2018, which was unveiled this week. Published annually since 1993, the World Disasters Report brings together the latest trends, facts and analysis of contemporary crises and disasters. The theme of this year's report is leaving no one behind in humanitarian response, and it calls on the international humanitarian sector to do more to respond to the needs of the world's most vulnerable. So just who are the people being left behind, and why are they falling through the cracks? For that matter, to what degree should the humanitarian sector be held responsible for reaching them? Joining me in the studio is Xavier Castellanos, Regional Director for Asia Pacific for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, or IFRC. So, Mr. Castellanos, thank you very much for joining us here. So let's take a look at the first chat. These numbers that I was talking about, 97 out of 134 million. I made a rough calculation. Basically, 72% of people are reached. That's leaving more than 1 out of 4 out of the umbrella of support. And here we're looking at the chart here, the total population, and then the second innermost layer is the people who actually need help and who are getting help, and all the other kind of misplaced in a certain degree. So who are these people, and where are these people? Do we know?
Well, these people in the communities normally are those persons that are either undocumented, people that probably for different reasons live far away from the access to the communities, or people that can be elderly population, or people with disabilities, or people who has been victims of violence, being this gender-based violence. So what we are looking is different kind of people in the World Disaster Report that shows clearly that we have a lot to do.
And let's also take a look at the breakdown of these people. There are 5 categories, I understand, outlined by this report as to under what circumstances are people not being reached, for instance, because of the money, because of the money factor, because of difficult access. There you see the car where there is a no-go sign there. And then there are people who are disabled or elderly, who are people out of sight. And then there are people who just left out of the loop when there is no money earmarked for them. And then there are people who are out of scope, for instance, people who are displaced by climate change or civil wars. And why these categories? And please elaborate a little bit more. Why are they so difficult to identify and reach?
Well, first, let me start with out of money. Last year, 11.1 billion US dollar, we were short of money. So immediately we will see that money constitutes a significant problem of not being able to reach. This means also that when we look at this, the out of sight, as I mentioned before, are those people who, for different reasons, let me put an example, people living in slums who migrate to the slums, are not registered, are not counted. Those peoples are left behind many times. If we look people who are people on in the move all the time, from be this within the country or outside of the country, are out of the support. But if we look also, when we say people out of reach represents is either by geographical reasons, by political reasons, it can be by bureaucratic reasons, or by legal bottlenecks. So any of these combinations, what happens is that humanitarian organizations will not be able to reach to those populations.
Yeah. Why have has your organization decided to focus on this aspect of the humanitarian assistance? Because this is a world disasters report, right? But you didn't really focus on how many typhoons or how many floods or how many earthquakes or plane crashes, but rather the gaps in your safety network. Why?
Well, when you will see the global commitments on the Sustainable Development Goals and commitments around the humanitarian work is leaving people, no one behind. And within the World Disaster Report, we said, okay, what we are doing our work. We know that we are unable to reach to all the population, so let's categorize, let's study, let's research, and let's find out what do we need to do different in the future in order to reach to those people in need.
Has it been the first time that a systematic analysis is done in this regard, or are there any historical figures to compare the trend to know whether the situation is getting worse or better?
Well, we have done the World Disaster Report for so many years, and we have identified already why it's important to go to local actors, local communities, to empower and enable communities in order to respond to disasters. We have seen different progress, but this is the first time that we said we put our lens to say, do we really reach to the people in need, and why we are not reaching to the people in need. So this time the World Disaster Report is putting the lens on giving us the orientation towards the future, what we need to do better, what we need to do different, but how do we need also the donor community to understand how they can perform differently in order to support the work that we do.
Yeah. You talked about the barriers, for instance. I know there are modern technology that can very much help people locate make places better outlined so that we know who are living where. Is there any hope in that front in terms of mobilizing modern technology to help reach some of the people who have been out of sight?
By all means. Let me give you one example. Yesterday in Mozambique, on the floods, what we managed to do is to utilize the drones, and with the drones do an air assessment and identify different communities that were out of reach. But to achieve with this example requires a significant preparedness. It means that also the dialogue with the government has been granted in order to ensure that in times of disaster, this kind of technology can be utilized to reach to the people in need faster, and technology can allow us those kind of things, but at the same time requires a proper dialogue with government authorities in the use of them.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the basic recommendations, important recommendations to address the problem that we have discussed in the report?
Yeah, one of the biggest recommendations is around incentives. You know, if we want to go to the hardest areas to reach, those organizations that are doing that, the incentives should be given to those organizations in order to say, those that are hardest to reach, we need to support those organizations. That's one. The second one is local action. The local humanitarian action means an investment on the local level, ensuring that the local capacities are there. The third is related to community-centered approaches. The fourth one is related to a shared responsibility towards resilience, be this individual resilience, community resilience, or institutional resilience. And certainly what you just mentioned before, the data, how to use data in a way that can be proper and can be utilized at any time.
Yeah, I know the international humanitarian sector is very active in China, have been very facilitative in terms of helping China address emergencies. According to the Vice President of Red Cross Society of China, last year alone about 130 million people in China needed help. So what has China been doing that has been very positive, been useful in your eyes, and what have you been sharing with your Chinese counterparts in terms of helping the Chinese deal with emergencies better?
Well, we have seen a significant work in China in terms of improving their own system at domestic level. the recent decision that I believe is an exemplary decision of joining all the departments that were in different ministers into one Minister of Emergency is an excellent decision towards the future, and that is going to improve into policies and also in terms of the capacity to deliver services at domestic level.
Yeah.
But we also have in China, if you will look the example, the Vice President of the International Federation of Red Cross Red Crescent Society, Mr. Chen, is from China and is influencing the humanitarian agenda. So influencing the humanitarian...
In what ways?
In different ways. For example, in the governing board of the International Federation, many decisions are made in terms of how we can perform differently, how we can address humanitarian needs differently, and the wisdom of individuals as the Vice President of the Federation, Dr. Chen, make a significant change in the way we see China also performing outside of China. Influencing the international humanitarian agenda is critical and is important because it gives a balance between what used to be the normal traditional donor community and now we have a China as a key representative as well.
Well, China is also going through a very interesting and important reform phase in terms of its approach towards emergency management. As you mentioned, we've had this very important institutional reform where China set up the Ministry of Emergency Management, which is the very first time, and China's philosophy is also changing from a passive attitude towards more proactive attitude in terms of emergency management, meaning we're not just running after disasters, but we anticipate to build resilience. How do you look at these changes taking place?
This is substantial change. It's critically important for different things. One, to ensure proper preparedness, proper early warning systems in place, not only looking into the response, but when a disaster happens, to have a proper rehabilitation recovery approaches. So what we will see is a greater participation of China in terms of resilience building in the country, and that is paramount importance.
All right, we look forward to seeing greater progress in terms of your work and in China's management of emergencies. Many thanks to Xavier Castellanos, Regional Director for Asia Pacific for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got the point.